Good morning.
That's the concept.
It's Tuesday, July 23rd. This is the Board of County Commissioners of Indian River County, and we're here for a special meeting. We're going to begin with a moment of silent reflection for first responders. That'll be followed by an invocation led by Commissioner Susan Adams, and then the Pledge of Allegiance led by Mr. Dylan Reingold. Please rise.
Dear Lord, today we seek blessings on the tasks before us. Bless our efforts with clear insight, our deliberations with wisdom, our work with clarity and accuracy, and our decisions with impartiality. We ask this in your holy name. Amen.
Amen.
Please remain standing, face the flag, and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you for that prayer, Commissioner Adams. We move on to item 4, additions and deletions to the agenda. There's one emergency item that's been requested to be added, and that deals with the preliminary fiscal year 1920 solid waste disposal district assessment that will be on the tax appraiser's paperwork.
Move approval as amended.
Second.
We have a motion to approve as amended by Commissioner Fletcher, seconded by Commissioner Adams. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 5-0. Thank you. The first matter today is under Community Development, Harmony Reserve LLC's request for final plat approval. Good morning, Mr. McCoy. Name and address for the record, please.
Good morning. For the record, John McCoy with the Planning Department. These final plats are normally on the consent agenda. Since this is under Community Development Matters, I wanted to take this opportunity to verify that all the items necessary for final plat approval have been received. And with that, I'm available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Mr. McCoy?
John, I take it there's going to be a entry exit off of 37th Street with this plat?
Correct. There, with Phase 3, it's the northern portion, which does connect to 37th Street.
Okay, and is there any like turn lane improvements required with that as well?
As I recollect, there is not. It's a paved connection to 37th Street.
Okay. So is that something that, since we all had to come here this morning, we could add turn lanes on this at this point?
I like your thoughts.
You think? Yeah, because I'm thinking, isn't this the time we normally get turn lanes?
Typically, that would be done at the preliminary PD with the evaluation of the traffic impact analysis. And there, I'll double check, but there may be a monitoring condition with this one that's working through Public Works.
Thank you, John. No other questions, Mr. Chairman.
No. How did Mr. Mecklin upset you?
Mini season is tomorrow. There's a lot more important things to be doing.
That's it. I knew we can get to the bottom of it.
There it is.
Any other questions of Mr. McCoy? I'll ask the public if there's anybody in the public who wishes to speak on this item. If not, commissioners.
No, wait, you have
Oh.
a member of the public.
We have one.
We should make this a meeting official. Yeah, I support the project. Obviously, it's a good project, and we've all done our work, and they've complied with everything. And I wanted to compliment the chairman and the commissioners for calling this meeting. It's just an example of how the county and the people that work in the county work together to get things done. So thank you very much, and I'm behind it 100%.
Thank you, Mr. Palin. Anyone else from the public?
Mr. Chairman, the applicant is not going to make any presentation?
I don't think he wants to push his luck. So the chair will entertain a motion.
Move approval.
Second. Motion from Commissioner Fletcher, second by Commissioner Zork. Any other comments or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much, Mr. McCoy. That motion passed 5-0. We now go on to the Solid Waste Disposal District, the item we added, which is a request for the preliminary fiscal year 1920 Solid Waste Disposal District assessment question. Good morning, Mr.
morning.
Burke.
Thank you, Chairman. For the record, Vincent Burke, Director of Utility Services. You may recall on the July 17th meeting, the Solid Waste Disposal District Board directed staff to increase the proposed assessment for the non-ad valorem assessment to $107.44 per waste generation unit, which equates to a rate of $171.90 per ERU, or equivalent residential unit. Staff is just looking for direction to separate out those folks who live within or inside the urban service area to be assessed that rate of $171.90 per ERU versus those folks that live outside the urban service area to pay a lower rate of $75.56 per waste generation unit, which equates to $120.90. I do know that there's a lot of moving parts and pieces to this. Will Rice from our GIS department and Robert Garst are working together tirelessly. They worked over the weekend to try to identify those parcels that would obviously be within or without the urban service area. Staff does have a meeting today at 3 o'clock with the property appraiser to nail down some of those logistics. We also have reached out to Waste Management to identify what the proposed rate would be for those folks that may be outside the urban service area and whether or not they would be direct billed for their garbage services. And so we have not heard back from Waste Management. We're certainly going to try to get some more information. I do know that there are 2 meetings before the next final meeting in September. We have the 13th of August and then the 10th of September, so staff hopefully will be providing the board some updates as we progress during this process. There's certainly folks here from the property appraiser's office and myself if there's any questions that the board may have.
Thanks. I'd just like to mention 2 things. Just the first one, so that nobody starts any conspiracy theories about this. I want to note that we did discuss this at the budget hearing. We basically, I remember, authorized just what you're asking for today, the having the 2 rates, one for the unincorporated part of the county, one inside and the second one outside the urban service area. The numbers are the same numbers you just gave us today, so there's really nothing that's changed. Evidently, we just want a little more clarity on it so that we can go forward. So, and the second thing is the higher rate of $171.90 is, it's not clear that that will occur yet. It's just that if we don't authorize the possibility of that rate today, we won't be able to do it for about 14 or 15 months. So it gives us some flexibility as we go forward with the solid waste needs and the possibility of going to mandatory pickup in that area. So that's it, Commissioner
Yep,
O'Brien.
Mr. Chairman, I have a different recollection, actually. I thought the property appraiser had asked us to have everything in the county, other than the municipality. So that would have included the area outside the urban service boundary. That was my impression of what the vote was, because they didn't want to have to try to break it up between the inside and outside. And so I thought our vote was everything in the county that's not inside a city, which would include outside the urban service area.
But we're talking about the rates. It would still be, yeah, you could put everything down on a sheet of paper if you want to, but the rate for outside the urban service area would still end up being 120. I mean, there was never, okay, it was from the conversation, it was never my understanding that this board was thinking of, if we had mandatory pickup, that would apply to the people outside the urban service area.
Okay, and I understand that's your impression, but my impression was it was everything in the county except for municipal city limits. I don't know. Dylan, have you had a chance to review the tape, or where are we on this?
So in my recollection, the idea had been floated at the Wednesday meeting last week that there would be a different rate for within the urban service boundary and then outside the urban service boundary. My recollection was from that meeting was that the property appraiser had said, no, I think you should keep all the unincorporated area the same rate, which would then be the 107.44 per waste generation unit or 171.90 equivalent residential unit charge. After that meeting, we had additional discussions that we were be able to separate out the outside the urban service boundary from within the urban service boundary, and thus the waste generation unit proposed by staff today is 75.56 for outside the urban service boundary versus 107.44 within the urban service boundary.
Okay, then my other question then would be, Vinny, is do we have separate rates for inside and outside the urban service area for the recycling portion of the assessment?
No, we have the same rate for both.
Okay, so we have the same rate for inside and outside the urban service boundary in the county. Then are we currently providing recycling services to those people outside the urban service boundary?
I believe the answer is yes. I can verify with Waste Management, but
Well, I would hope so, because if we're charging them for it, they should be getting the service. So then, my next question is, why would we not provide waste pickup then? If we're already going out there for recycling, why would we not just go along and do the waste pickup as well?
I think when the 2015 RFP was solicited for the collection services of recycling and for garbage, I believe the designation was the urban service area for that rate and whether or not the universal rate that could be applied. And so if you look at the CPI increase, it does focus in on those properties inside the urban service area. Hence my email to Waste Management last week for that clarification. I apologize, I don't have the information today. I did ask them for that, so my intent was to get clarification whether or not contractually we'd be able to service those folks for the universal or mandatory rate outside the urban service area, similar to the residential recycling rate that's been applied right now.
Okay, thank you.
And to follow up on that, if I may, actually within the waste management contract, it specifically says, should SWID decide to implement universal residential collection service in the urban service area of the solid waste franchise area, along with any participating municipality, and then says, upon implementation of universal residential collection service, the county shall assume billing residents receiving universal service through a non-ad valorem assessment. So the concept that I saw in the that we all saw in the contract was basically we were under the contract going to be picking up the billing for the folks within the urban service boundary.
Mr. O'Brien, any other questions?
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions by the board? Anybody from the public wish to speak on this? So, Mr. Burke, if you would, just for the sake of the board, clearly articulate what the staff recommendation is?
Staff recommends that the board approve the proposed solid waste residential charge of $107.44 per waste generation unit, which equates to a rate of $171.90 per equivalent residential unit, ERU, for the unincorporated areas of the county within the urban service area, and to approve a proposed solid waste residential charge of $75.56 per waste generation unit, which equates to a rate of $120.90 per ERU for properties outside the urban service area.
And do you need any other flexibility to, because I understand you have a meeting at 3 o'clock with the property appraiser, do you need any other flexibility to do the announcement or bureaucratic aspects of it?
I don't believe so. Again, this is just a proposed rate placeholder with the final vote in September of this year. It's not finalized, but just as you had said earlier, just a proposed rate for a placeholder for this process.
And there will be public opportunity to speak on this before the board actually takes action on this
Yes.
in the future? Okay.
Quick question. And staff doesn't feel like we need to reserve the ability to apply this to the entirety outside the urban service boundary? Because that would not be the intention? Because the reason I'm asking is once we make this decision, that's gonna limit that assessment, which that's gonna limit the assessment moving forward. So I thought we were trying to make it more umbrella-like, so you could have those conversations with waste management and then go and drill down.
I see what you're saying, and to your point, and to Commissioner O'Brien's, it might be best to have a reserve placeholder blanket for the entirety of those customers, both inside and outside the urban service area, with the caveat that staff would come back with more information if possible. So there is some very specific timelines that the property appraiser must meet to get this out. This is the reason for the time is of the essence, hurrying up. It might be best to amend that to say we apply a universal rate for all of these properties, both inside and outside the urban service area, subject to the additional information that we would get from waste management with respect to the rate, and subject to the property appraiser being able to have a two-tiered rate system on their notices for those residents. So in essence, you have a placeholder at the higher rate, right? And then you would be able to drill down once you have more information.
I just want to do whatever's going to make this situation easier to have the conversation in the next, couple of weeks, so we're not corner or boxing y'all into what might need to happen. So,
Just for history's sake, I think, and then I can feel free to correct me, I think the reason why it was originally done in the contract as inside the urban service area, is because that's the way you could get the lowest price per customer. Because once you go outside the urban service area, you've got a big ride to get to some of these people.
Right.
And they become really unaffordable. So this was, my guess, staff's way of trying to get the most effective rate for the largest number of people in the county, should we go to mandatory pickup in the future.
Right, which makes complete sense. Again, I mean, if that's where you guys are, then that's fine with me. I just wanted to make sure we're giving you the leeway that needs to happen to make.
But we need to adapt fairly, and I think that was the intention of the property appraiser as well, because there would be a lot of complications with calculations to go forward and notifications to go forward, which the property appraiser said that they would do whatever it takes to get the job done, but it would be far more complicated if we got involved with separating the rates and then have to delineate where we are going to go from there. Again, the contract was engineered and agreed upon well before mandatory waste pickup was even considered, and I believe that's our dilemma. But I believe that, as you said, I was under the impression that we would be looking at a more umbrella application, so it would be easier for waste management to come up with a number, as well as notification and less of a burden on those who live outside of the urban service area. I understand it's a lot of travel. There is some traveling, and yes, inside the urban service area, maybe it's 30 feet from one pickup to the next, and maybe it's 2.5 miles to the next pickup out in the urban service area. But I don't think if we are taking funds from our citizens and collecting, I think that we should be fair and equal on the service and the charge for the service.
In any event, we don't need to make that decision today. The easiest thing may be to just have the 17190 be universal for in the unincorporated area of the county for today. Would that give you any problems, Mr. Burt?
Commissioners, Monstrom at the Solid Waste Disposal District. The only thing I would add is kind of what you hinted toward is the rate, that the provision for single stream or for mandatory collection in the waste management contract is for inside the urban service area of unincorporated Indian River County. So this 17190 is a max, if you will, for those residents inside this urban service area. Most likely it could be higher, which we haven't had that discussion with waste management yet. So at this time, the safest thing to do is just honor what's in the agreement.
Manchu, could you clarify that? Because you said it's a max, but it could be higher. Did you mean?
If right now, the rate in the contract agreement for mandatory collection, the provision to go to mandatory collection is only for inside the urban service area boundary of unincorporated Indian River County. So we have a number for that, and that number, the 17190 covers that number. If you include residents outside the urban service area, we don't have a rate from Waste Management for that right now. And given time is of the essence, we wouldn't be able to come up with that for this trim notice.
So this proposal puts it in line with the current contract?
It
and so
does.
it makes it easier for you guys because we're kind of going by what we already have in place?
Exactly.
Okay.
And if I might just add, just so that the public is well aware, this 17190 rate only is for 6 months of mandatory collection beginning April 1st. And if we go this route and we implement mandatory, then a year from now, we'll be adding the other 6 months worth in. So just, I don't want anybody to think that 17190, when you say it's the max, yeah, it is for this year, but if we go mandatory, it's gonna be year-round an increase. And then, Commissioners, I brought this up Wednesday because of my fears of our contamination, our recycling program. And I didn't want to wait a whole year to get to this point if we had to take action. And that's why I proposed 6 months of funding for mandatory. I'm fine with just going with inside the urban service area. Obviously, that's 95% of where our garbage is coming from. The rate probably will be a lot higher outside, and we'll have to make, I think, a separate decision whether we want to go mandatory outside or not. So I'm fine with what staff has proposed with the tiered rate. It'll address my concern, which was contamination, and get us moving forward if we decide to go that route. And so I think it'd probably be simpler to go with this because we don't know what that outside rate will be, so.
And I'll just add one more thing for the public. And again, Himanshu, why don't you get near the podium to correct me if I say anything wrong? But
Why don't you step up?
at the end of the day, all those people who right now are paying Waste Management to pick up their trash will end up paying less for that trash pickup, but those people who don't have any trash pickup will be required to pay that dollar amount. So I don't want anybody listening to this to think, who's already got trash pickup, to think that, we're going to add another $171 to their bill. We'll be adding something but taking away more than that from another column. So now that we've completely befuddled the waters here, I think we'll ask once more if anybody from the public wants to ask anything.
And you worked in a spreadsheet somehow.
And there being none,
Mr. Chairman, I'll go ahead and move staff recommendation as presented in our agenda.
that's a motion from Commissioner O'Brien. I'll be happy to second it. Any other conversation? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 5-0. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Himanshu and Vinnie. And with that, this special call meeting is closed.